Hi, welcome back to Sailor's Disgrace. This is officially Season 3, Episode 1. I know I have not posted any episodes in a while. I've posted a few updates on news and recent events, but I've been a little bit busy working in the background on a big project, and that's what this episode is all about. We have just established a nonprofit called Safe Waters. I don't want to give too much of it away. I like the interview to speak for itself, but there are currently 4 members of the board, myself included, of course, Master Chief Joanne Cloud, Meghan Klement, and Chief Emily Hand. They are all fellow Coast Guardsmen and survivors as well. And our group's purpose really is to help those that need help. You know, the ones that kind of fall through the cracks, don't feel comfortable talking to commands, or don't understand how to reach out for resources. And for those folks that have gone through the process, like myself, that felt like they're left high and dry, that they didn't have anywhere to go to, no one to really talk to, which is why I started this podcast and group in the first place. But as I've said before, I just kind of let things evolve. And I couldn't be more proud of where we are right now. And I'm very excited for the future. And at the turn of the new year, we're really getting things going. We have a lot of work ahead, and we need a lot of support as well. We'll talk about those things in this interview. But thank you for tuning in. Please send questions, and I look forward to sharing this interview with you guys. Thanks again. Here, really appreciate the time, really appreciate all of us getting together. This is a great opportunity for us to get our word out, who we are and what we are. So I'd like to start off with our president, Emily, to just give us a quick introduction of who you are and why you're here.
Hey, thanks, Julian. My name is Emily Hand. I've been in the Coast Guard for 11 years now. I'm active duty. I'm originally from Missouri, and I'm currently stationed at Station Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. And like Julian said, I am the president of Safe Waters, and I can't wait to tell you guys more about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Sweet. And Megan, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I am the only non-active duty member. I was in the Coast Guard from 2012 to 2015. Um, I currently live in rural Oregon with my husband and 3 sons, and we run a small farm. And this is currently my egg. This is what I'm going to be doing for most of my time outside the home.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. And Joanne, last but not
Uh,
least.
yes, hello. Joanne Cloud. So I've been in the Coast Guard 22 years. I'm originally from Hamilton, Ohio, currently stationed Coast Guard Recruiting Command, although I am working remote and traveling all over the US. Um, Super excited about Safe Water and to be here, and happy we can share and tell you all about it.
Sweet. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. So we got our introductions. We all know who we are, but let's kind of dive right into like the meat and potatoes of what and why we're in Safe Waters, why we started this whole nonprofit. So again, I'll just go down the same way, Emily. Like, so what inspired you to start Safe Waters, and what personally motivates you to support survivors of sexual assault and harassment within the Coast Guard?
Well, it's actually a crazy story how it got started. I was sitting at my desk. Just I don't know. This was like back in September. I was sitting at my desk and I was like, oh my gosh, like all the sexual assault stuff with the Coast Guard. I was like, this is so crazy. My own personal experience with sexual assault, like the past 11 years, I've been like, there's got to be something that I can do personally. Like, someone has to be able to do something. The Coast Guard's not. What can I do? And I had seen all of your videos, and I was like, I'm just gonna message Meghan on Instagram. I don't know if she's gonna see it, but I'm just gonna message her. And I messaged her and I was like, hey, like I saw your video. Would you want to start an affinity group with me? And it was like a couple days, maybe, or a day. I don't remember, Meghan, how long it was, but she responded. She's like, I don't know what that is, but yeah. I was like, okay, cool. And so from that day, like I want to say it was September, from that day, we've talked every single day just about FaceTiming for hours on end, talking about what it was going to look like, how we wanted to do this. Multiple people we were working with, and like we're super excited to help us out. Megan's friend Erin Williams, like she was huge supporter, loved our idea, got us in touch with a bunch of people. And then we realized we didn't want to be an affinity group. We didn't want to be under anybody else. We wanted to just be be in charge of ourselves essentially and separate from the Coast Guard. And so that's like my personal drive, like my personal experience within the Coast Guard, the lack of support and fear of reporting and, everything that I know survivors deal with. So I feel their pain. I've been there, and I'm just excited to give them a resource outside of what they're used to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, I can definitely relate to that. And it's interesting. And people have been following the podcast or our group, like, know that I met Megan and Joe back in March of this year when we recorded our survivor stories, and that's how we met. But then how you came to us, it's so cool. Like it's like this organic fusion that I wasn't expecting. Like none of this I've been expecting. And I think I've talked about this extensively. Like I'm just kind of letting everything flow, and we're getting some great people. And like I know we're happy to have you, Emily. Like it's just been awesome. Like we're all on the same page, and it's pretty humbling to see how everything's been turning out. So
It,
yeah.
yeah, just started as a wild idea. I had
Mhm.
no plan at all. So I think we
Yep.
still kind of don't have a plan, but we're making one as we go, which is great to see.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I was in line for It's a Small World when she messaged me. And I was like, what the heck is this? But yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool for me because I'm connected to all three of you in such special ways. I mean, starting back with Joanne, literally helped put me into the Coast Guard, and in my own assault story was the first person to listen to me, and Joanne was the first person to fight for me. And so this last February when she called me, and I will never forget, I was sitting in my living room and she's like, are you ready to tell your story? And I was like, fuck yeah, I am. And she's like, well, we're going to California. And I was like, I will not do this unless you are sitting by me on that plane and you are with me every step of the way. And she was. And then that's where we met Julian, and everything's unfolded into now Safe Waters. And it's just such a special thing. To see all of us come together. And I remember Julian, me, you, and Joanne, after we were filming, I think it was the first day, we're like, let's go get lunch. Or maybe it was the second day, I can't remember. But we went to Subway and we were walking in Alameda, and we're like, what did we just do? Like, I think we all kind of knew like what we did was kind of a big deal, but we had all agreed like we are going to keep the doors open for whatever comes our way, and we are going to be able to find a way to like continue down this path of healing for not only ourselves but helping other people.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited about how this is unfolding and that we all get to be a part of it together, and that Emily kind of found us all. So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Like the shepherd. You're like herding us all together.
Yeah.
We need
Yes.
someone. Yeah. No, that's awesome, Megan. And yeah, it's been very just nuts how everything's been unfolding. And so I don't want to steal any thunder from Joe, but Joe, so what motivates you to support survivors? Like what's your purpose behind Safe Waters, and like why are you with this group?
How much time do we have? Just
As much as you need.
yeah, so obviously have, multiple experiences with sexual harassment, sexual assault during my 22 years. But kind of organically back in 2000, I don't know if it was 21 or 22, but by sharing my story and being open, um, organically people just kept finding me and wanting to share theirs. And that grew and grew, and it became this thing. And I don't really have a better term for it other than like an underground network of survivors and victims, and just leaning on each other, feeling more comfortable reaching out and talking to each other versus like going to the command or CJIS to report. And so it kind of just opened up this realm of being able to connect with each other from coast to coast, unit to unit, ask questions, seek resources, or, hey, you had this experience, I just want someone to talk to. And it continued to grow. I tried in the beginning to think kind of like Emily, like surely there has to be something we can do with this. And I tried to tell the Coast Guard, like, hey, this is growing, this should be something. Nobody really wanted to touch it. And it kept growing. And then in 2023, I think just by putting word out that people could ask questions or come together when, an assault occurs, I want to say we had like maybe in 2022, it was like 60 something phone calls that I received. And again, it's an array. Some people want to ask, what's it like to go through a CJIS interview? Others just say, hey, if I do go talk to the SARC, what are my options? Can you walk me through what the process looks like? Or should I report or should I not report? Or, it could be anything. Sometimes they just want to talk. And then in 2023, that grew to like 130 something calls. And I say something loosely because this happened on accident. So I wasn't keeping the best statistics. And in 2024, I decided to pay attention. And so far, and what is today, like December 30th? It's almost January. We're at 212 calls this year.
Wow.
And this is a very like tiny, underground thing. It's not well known. It's not published anywhere in the Coast Guard. It exists by word of mouth. So for me, wanting to do Safe Waters is wanting to bring this above ground and saying, hey, I'm not going to be here forever. How do I move this into something more formal so that when I'm gone, this still exists and people can still get the help that they need? I saw an email. Did we make those videos this year or last year?
That was this year.
This year.
Oh, look at that. It was this year. So I saw this email that was like, hey, do you want to contribute to SAP or something? And I remember reading the email and thinking, there's no way in hell someone's gonna make some survivor videos. Like, the Coast Guard is not gonna have that. We're all getting fired. And naturally, if I see something like, that is a little outlandish, I'm gonna volunteer for it. So I remember volunteering, and Miss Charles, who was running it, said, oh, I have one other person in mind. It's Julian Bell. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, cool. And then she was kind of going over with me, like, we're going to fly, we're going to film, this is what it will look like. And Julian, I don't know how you felt, but I just realized, like, you and I are still in, and we're both long term. So I thought, well, that's not really fair because not all sexual assault survivors stay in.
Large
So
portion of us don't.
if we only show your story and my story, like, are we really a good representation? So I remember asking her, what about the people that get out? Like, they're all done because of what happened. And she was like, well, we're not going to get any of them to come talk to us. And I was like, hold my beer. I know someone that probably would do that. And she was like, really? And I'm like, yeah, let me call her and see. So of course, I invited Meghan, like, you want to go to California and make this random video? And she's like me, sure, I guess we're getting on a plane. But to really show, like, for me, how meant to be this was, after those videos were released, which is, a whole other conversation, there is an email in my Coast Guard email from a random female chief that just said, hey, like, I saw your video, thank you. Guess who that was? Emily.
Yeah.
So fast forward to later, Meghan calls me and she's like, I met this chief, you'll like her, she's cool, and we're gonna make this affinity group. Do you want to help? I'm like, sure, what is it? What are the chances that later I go and I look at Emily's name and I'm like, that's the girl in my email.
I'm such a spaz.
I don't think so. No, it's just very full circle that we would then, after, and then again, when I first met Julian, I was in a very tiny room and somebody was like, would you like to share 22 years of trauma? Yes, please. And I just trauma dumped all over a man I've never met. And he had to sit there and smile. So, here we are.
Joe, really quick. I will never forget you telling your story, and I had to sit across from you and be your eyes, and I was bawling.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you crying yet? You're like, I'm not crying. And I'm like, okay.
You know what I felt bad for is I wish people could go like behind the scenes and see where we filmed that video. And this like very tiny room, there's no oxygen. What I feel bad for was the two PAs that had to three people trauma dump while they filmed it.
For 2 days.
They left and requested leave. Straight up on the day.
They didn't even know that that's what they were going to be filming either.
Yeah. Yeah, the typical Coast Guard fashion, it was piss poor planning, it just fell together from the headquarters folks. But we got it done and because of that, we're all here.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Here's my trauma. Do you guys want to go get lunch?
Yeah.
It's totally normal.
I will miss
Yeah,
that.
well, that's kind of what we are, right? Like, but that's what Safe Waters is. That's kind of what I see it like, hey, I understand you have some shit going on. Let's talk,
Yeah.
and let's see where this goes and let's see what we can figure out. And maybe just like you said, all the stuff that you get, Joe, it's everything from someone just wanting someone to listen and validate what they say, or they want advice on a CJIS interview, which we all know is one of the most horrifying things you can go through, especially for a junior member, right? And so like there's so many different things that you have done with this underground network, and I knew nothing about it, and before I met you, and I definitely could have used something like this, and we kind of are using it, right? Like we're the group, but we
Yeah.
talk to each other about our shit, and we help others through it. So like it's already happening, and you've been such a pivotal and crucial part of that, Joe. And I know it's worn on you, just the amount of work that it is, right? And I think you're starting to realize, not starting, but I think you realized for a while, like just how taxing that is. And you've given stuff to Megan and stuff to me already, like we've ran with things. And I think having this group and having this momentum and having processes in place, and like you said, hey, we're going to retire someday. And even after retired, I still want to be part of this, but um, we need this to be self-running, right? We need it to be running after I'm fully retired, right? When you're fully retired and don't want to deal with shit at all. We just want to sit on the beach somewhere and drink Mai Tais. But um, that's how I see this unfolding. And this underground network, as you know, it's like I think you kind of mentioned how it hasn't been received well in certain areas and certain powers that be. I'll just put it that way. And I've had those conversations with those folks as well. And yeah, there's been open denial of the network even existing, right? But we have a clear demand for it, right? I mean, the
That's like
four
the
of us
hardest
alone.
part for
Hmm.
me, I think, was taking 212 calls by yourself and you're listening to this member and they're usually distraught, they're usually upset. You're going to let them, say what they need to say. You're not part of their command. So you don't owe anybody any explanation. You're just there to listen. They're going to make their own decision. I'm not here to tell you what to do, what not to do. I'm simply here to give you facts. Do you want to know what the process is? I'll explain it to you. Do you want to know what, CJIS is like? We can talk about that. At the end of the day, they're going to choose. Do they want to report? Do they not want to report? What kind of resources are they looking for? Sometimes it was like peer to peer, but really the last 6 months, I feel like led up to Safe Water. I had a young lady in LA contact me. It was like 2 a.m. on a Sunday. She had been assaulted at her unit. She had not told anybody. She was hysterical. Coincidence that I had helped somebody in that exact area the year before. And that person had contacted me like, hey, you helped me last year. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm doing great. I was able to connect the two of them because she's there in person and get them together to help each other, which was very powerful. At the same time, I met you two. Well, I already knew Megan, but I met you. And then we had that member we were helping in Miami. I was not going to make any headway on that. And Julian, you were able to come in and help. And I started to realize as these things happened, like, oh yeah, I definitely needed more help than trying to do this by myself for the last few years. Not only is it mentally taxing, but sometimes you can't, like, you want to help them and you can't.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing was a recent case that we had. Again, I leave all the cases anonymous. I would never, talk about someone's stuff without their permission. But the recent one that we had this summer, where we had 3 victims, 1 unit, and Megan helped. And I remember one of these victims feeling so much more comfortable talking to Megan because Megan's not in the Coast Guard anymore. Winning, right? Like, we're here to help. So I think naturally by allowing you to help, it made me realize this definitely has to come above ground. I've gotten, oh my gosh, so much backlash. people don't believe the network exists, or the stuff I've heard. I don't care. I'm old. I'm gonna retire soon.
It's ridiculous.
I
Like,
don't care.
just with
Yeah.
my social media and coming out, I've talked to and helped upwards of 60. That's me alone,
Yep.
just
Yeah.
social media and being an outside source. So
Yeah,
it's
now imagine me being in doing 211. Let's add
Mhm.
your 60, plus who else, doesn't call because they just don't know they can.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Emily showed up at like the perfect time of being like, okay, we have to do something. What is the something?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think having that underground network above ground, right? Like calling the
Yeah.
above ground, or just call it the network or whatever. It's safe waters is what it is, right? So like
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I think we're shining light on something that's just it's been there. People know it's there, even if they deny it. Like it's
Oh,
clearly there. Like we have documented assault cases. We know that there's those. So those people still need help, right? Like we still need help. We still need resources and peer support and trauma buddies and like there's so many different things that they know exists, but if you keep your head in the sand and hope it goes away, I guess that might be part of their thing and worried about optics and image and whatever. I can go on about that. But so so with this idea and like as we grow as an organization, one of the things I'll just ask this to the group and whoever wants to chime in, but like how do we ensure that it's going to remain survivor centered and how do we actively support that mission? So like there are so many different things out there right now, and not to give credence to any one group or particular entities, but like there's been a lot of things that happened over the past year, even outside of myself and Joe and Megan's stuff. How do we keep focus on what we're talking about here? Like how we're really just dedicated to helping survivors. Like what challenges do you see with that, and like how do we persevere through that?
Ooh, so I'm going to go first, just saying trust. So the only reason this network has grown from 60 calls to now 211, I leave everything anonymous. I don't tell anybody who I talk to. I can tell you the number of calls I received and the district it was in. I don't write down the units. Do I know them in my head and remember people's names? Sure, right? But unless they want to come forward and report formally and go through that process, it's not for me to share information. So I think in order to transfer that trust, bring this above ground and turn it into what safe water should be, I just don't ever see us being the type, and I'll let Megan and Emily comment, but where we're sharing stuff on social media, name dropping people late, like that's just not us. I'm here for you and I'm going to answer your questions and get you the resources you need. You can remain anonymous the whole way. If you want to tell me your name, great. You want to tell me what unit you're at? Awesome. You don't? I don't care. I'm still going to help you, even if all you say is, my name is Sam. Okay, Sam. So I think that's probably a really big one, is making sure as we partner with other organizations, we align ourselves with like-minded people who are there for one reason, no vigilante style,
Mhm.
just to help. I don't know, Emily, Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the biggest thing is that we all have a personal conviction with this because we have experienced it. Like Joe, oh my gosh, 22 years. In my 11 years, like the amount of things that I've looked back on, been like, oh my gosh, that was sexual harassment. Oh my gosh, like what? So I think we just have such a passion for it because we didn't have anyone and we want to be able to be that person or that group to help these survivors because we were all left out to dry. And like I never told anyone because I knew that my first command, I was a non-rate on a 378. I
Sounds
knew,
familiar.
yeah, I knew that I didn't matter. My supervisor didn't know my name for the 2 years that I was there. Like, sure, he was a bosun, I was a non-rate, but he was still my supervisor. He never knew my name. And I knew that me coming forward and saying, that this happened, it wouldn't matter because I never mattered to anybody on that boat. Like, so then Megan, you can step into, but like, I think we're also passionate that it's always going to be about the survivor because we're reminded every single day when we're talking to each other, when we're in therapy, because we trauma dump on each other all the time. Like, I think we're just constantly reminded of why we're here. So
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents on that.
absolutely. I feel the same way. I mean, I personally, being Joanne's non-rate 10 years ago, I am not surprised that this is where she ended up because I still have emails that Joanne sent on my behalf out to headquarters advocating for me, and it's kind of cool for me because Meghan then was so broken and so lost and lonely. And then to have Joanne come in and kind of stand behind me, that is like really when my fight started. And it's so incredible for me to be here a decade later, now being able to work with Joanne to help people like she was helping me, and young Joanne too. And we've all been there. And I'll never forget what it felt like after months um, of being afraid and not having anybody care about me to then have Joanne and my captain listen to me and validate me. Um, and that gave me the power to fight for myself. And I no longer was a victim and I started becoming a survivor. And I am so dedicated to helping all of these people find that within themselves so they can start healing because that's when my healing started. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think all of us are about the person and we're not about the service. We're not
Mm-hmm.
getting paid by the service. We are just wanting to help everybody else find healing within themselves. That's our goal.
Yeah, that's fantastic,
That,
you know. Um,
Julian, I would love to hear your thought too. As all the stuff has emerged and happened over the last year, obviously, when you go through trauma, there's all the emotions, right? A lot of anger, like grief, you go through all the stages. But I noticed too over the last year, there's some of the anger really just, it kind of throws off track the purpose of what people are after.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like for me, I don't hate the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is Emily. The Coast Guard is you. The Coast Guard is Meghan. The Coast Guard is me. I work for a recruiting command. Like we
Yeah.
are looking actively for our replacements every day. I love the Coast Guard. So my goal with Safe Waters would be, what can I do to make it better before I go? Not bash, trash the service, the Coast Guard so awful. No, I want to make it better, right? So that people continue to join and serve. And like Meghan said, you look back a decade later and you're like, oh wow, like I helped all those people. Or hey, fate brought me, and I met Emily and I met Julian. And now look, now we created this really great thing that is helping where there's a hole and a need, and it's going to make the Coast Guard better. So what are your thoughts like on what you've seen over the last year and some of that like crazy? I don't know what other word to use. I'm going to use
Yes,
the word.
crazy is a good word. No, y'all have such it's so interesting. It's almost like hearing yourself talk sometimes. Like when each of us talk, like it's just like, yeah, I totally agree with that. It makes perfect sense. And we're on such a same page. And speaking of, again, not giving credence to particular people or groups, but like the antithesis of that, right? So like there are those out there that saw an opportunity when these things started to surface, right? And they, right or wrong, sometimes maybe they do help certain people, or certain people are just hurt and in those grief stages and are really angry and for valid reasons, but get some bad advice, get some bad service from people, and it winds up hurting them, right? And it hurts other people unnecessarily, right? So I think you have to come at this from a point of you've already gone through that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've all been through it, and not to say that we're better than anybody, but like we're at a point in our lives where we've dealt with our traumas, and we're not. Sometimes I still get angry, of course, like there's certain things that make me angry, but it's not a vendetta, right? It's not a justice. Well, we do work on that as well, but um, we did talk to the Senate, but like it's it's more from a place of healing, like you're saying. It's from a place of understanding as opposed to just that hot white anger or that retribution or that self-serving promotion, right? And some people are out there looking to make a buck, or they're out there to get their name known on the backs of others' trauma, and that's just, I'll just say that's fucked up, right? And that's not us. And I think something I'd like to highlight too, kind of going back to who we are as Safe Waters, is, and I'll post this stuff on my page, but like our bylaws, our code of conduct, our mission statement, everything that we have when we take in volunteers, all that stuff's drawn out, and we have a process to make sure that people, volunteers especially, are holding to those values, right? And are also going to maintain confidentiality and anonymity through non-disclosure agreements and all that kind of stuff. So, like anybody that's questioning that and is unsure of whether or not we can actually maintain confidentiality, yes, we can. And there are, um, we'll talk more about that, I think, further on in the interview, but I just wanted to highlight that too. It kind of plays into it, you know? And so I think it's good to highlight what we are and what we're not. And to let people know that if they come to us, yes, it is truly a safe space. I mean, it's in our name, right? But it really is a safe space. You can come here, you can talk, you can ask questions, you can, we may not have all the answers right at our fingertips, but we're going to get it for you, and we're going to help you find that, like I think Megan said, like that inner strength to figure out what you need, right? Because I think we've all been in those situations where we don't even know what we want, right? We just know that we need help of some kind, or else we're just going to go nuts, or we're already
Yes.
nuts. Yeah, yeah. So awesome, thanks, Joe. Yeah, I think that's pretty much how I feel about that, right? Um, it's important to maintain our credibility, and it's important to maintain our virtue as we go forward in this, and to provide appropriate services for people and not be callous or hurtful to anyone, and not to demand or push people outside of their comfort zones. I think that's a big thing too. Because if you take someone that's actively going through an investigation, I'll just say I'm also a victim advocate, right? And I do deal with active cases in the Coast Guard, and there's people that try to pull them from their investigation and bring them onto social media, and tell them how, like, it just happened to them, like, I mean, within weeks.
Hmm.
And there's people snipe hunting these people, and it's horrible. It's horrible. So we're not that. I think we got that out there. We are not anything like that. So um, good. So I kind of like to shift gears a little bit, still talking about the survivor aspect of it, survivor pieces, and we have our own stories and we talked about. But what are some of the unique challenges that survivors of sexual assault, excuse me, and harassment face in the Coast Guard, and how can Safe Waters, excuse me, how can Safe Waters bridge that gap? How can Safe Waters help with those barriers? And again, open question, whoever wants it.
I'll go.
Okay.
I think we've all come to the agreement that we want to be able to offer our survivors as many third-party resources as possible. And that's what we're working on growing right now, because so many people are so afraid of the retaliation aspect. And I remember there were times when I would tell my HS things, and then magically my warrant knew them. And that happens a lot, and it shouldn't. And so I think a lot of people are scared because they don't want their information out there, rightfully so. And so I really think it is so important for these coasties to have an outside resource, where a safe place where it's not going to leave us and it's not going to involve their coworkers. Because sometimes I remember, like, the victim advocate I was supposed to report to was a chief in the next shop over, and I'm like, I just really didn't want to see her every day at work, knowing my stuff and knowing that she hung out with my perpetrator outside of work. And so I would have loved to have had an outside resource where I knew that none of my coworkers were going to know about it. My command wasn't going to know about it. I wasn't going to then have it inputted into my medical record, because I ended up getting kicked out of the Coast Guard for, or medically discharged. I shouldn't say kicked out, but I got medically discharged um, after my assaults happened. They started my med board, so people who have had careers, long careers, they're at 15 years, they're not going to want to come and put that in their medical record and risk losing their career over it. So I think that's where we come in.
Yeah, I concur. It's that thought of how small the Coast Guard is, right? And especially your unit, wherever you are, and you go through something like that, to be able to trust even the big Coast Guard at that point, right? So it's like we have these programs, and we have Sapper, and we have CG support and all this stuff. But when you have something like that happen to you, that's all part of that same group that did that to you, right? Like
Mhm.
it's hard to trust a system that literally just was part of destroying your life, right? Really is to have trust in that. So I think that's where, for me, that's the biggest key piece of all this stuff, and the biggest barrier to reporting is that trust. And you might have the best chief in the world, you might have the best captain in the world, but if you can't trust the random person on a postcard in the bathroom to call, right, it doesn't mean anything, right? So like if you have to call a victim advocate, but you don't know who the hell that is, it's just some random chief. They probably know your chief. They're going to talk about it. You're going to get screwed over. Like it just all that stuff's playing in your head, and to have that outlet, right? To have that, hey, this is a group of folks. Here we are. We're safe waters. You can come talk outside of all of that stuff, and some of that stuff has a place. Again, not to brag, but like, yeah, I'm a victim advocate. I'm a part of the SAPR program, and we do help people through that system. But I completely understand why people don't come to us. Like I have no judgment when someone's like, "Oh, I didn't report this for 3 years." Like, okay, I totally get it. Like, I didn't report mine for 12 years. Like, I get it. Like it's there's so many different reasons. And what do you guys, Emily, Joe, any chime in on that?
You might also have the worst chief out there, and that's the person that you're supposed
Yes.
to tell things to. And like being a bosun's mate, I've been the only female at most of my units for maybe not my whole tour, but for most of it. And I'm not gonna go to my male chief and tell him, especially as like a new BM3. Like I'm not gonna go tell him. And then like I had this situation where I got called in to my OIC's office. He was a BMC because he wanted to know if I was sleeping with the MK3 because the MK3 was sending pictures, taking pictures of me without my knowing and sending it around the unit with comments about how I looked or whatever. And so I was called into the office to be asked if I was the one who was like sleeping with him. And I was like, well, what about what he's doing? Like, you're not talking to him. And so, like, that immediately, I hadn't been there very long. And, like, that immediately told me that that chief, the person that I'm supposed to be able to go to, like my OIC, he's supposed to care about me. I can't go to him. Like, so you might have a bad chief and you might get called out and because you're the only woman, so you're clearly the problem. And I know it's not like that everywhere, but it opened my eyes to a lot of things, that unit. It was small in the middle of Michigan, just kind of isolated. So I know it's out there. I know it still happens and it makes me sad, but yeah, it gave me thick skin for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna pick two things. The first is advocacy. So at some point, I don't know, maybe you'll link our stories to our Safe Waters site in case somebody wants to see them. But I remember after my first assault, sitting in a Master Chief's office, and I'm third class. And he's like, "Oh, he's done this before." And all that went through my brain was like, hold on a second. So if you would have held him accountable when he did it the first time, he wouldn't be here to do it again. And like, I didn't have an advocate. I was young. I didn't know what the heck was going on. And I wished I would have had someone to sit there with me, ask those questions that were going through my brain that I was not going to ask out loud to an E9. And now I sit here as an E9 and I look around at some of these network calls and the people that need help. And just in 2024 alone, like the amount of people that have been like, will you just sit with me for my CGIS interview?
Yep.
Well, hell yeah. Or, will you just sit with me while I talk to my command chief? I'm uncomfortable. Would you be with me? And I realized that simple step of advocacy and being able to ask the questions that they're thinking, but they can't get it out because they're in the middle of a trauma and they're uncomfortable. And this is some Master Chief or XO's office. I think if that's one of the challenges they face, they don't have an advocate and they're uncomfortable. And so
the rank structure is scary.
Right? That's huge for me. I have a friend that I dearly love. And I remind her, you're a commander now. Like, no one's coming to talk to you. You're scary. And she laughs and she's like, oh my gosh, I am. And I'm like, yes. And then recently I had a lieutenant say to me, Master Chief, I would never call you. And I'm like, wait, why? He's like, well, you're a Master Chief. Sir, no one cares. No one cares. My cell phone number is up there for a reason. Like, no one cares. But the advocacy part is huge. And I still, with these network calls, 99% of them do not have an advocate that they feel comfortable with. And that doesn't mean there aren't, again, I'm not here to bash. That doesn't mean there aren't amazing VAs out there. You could be the best trained amen VA the Coast Guard ever had. That doesn't mean they feel comfortable with you. Even if you did nothing wrong, they're not comfortable. Maybe because you're in the shop next door and they just don't want to trauma dump on you right now. So advocacy. And the other one, I'm not going to look at Emily or Megan's face. Can't look because we all laugh at each other at the same time. But accountability. Right? I'm not looking. Megan, I can see you. There's no way to not look at her on the Zoom call. Anyway, so accountability, transparency. How do I say this nicely so I don't like end up masted for this podcast? There just isn't any. I mean, someone get the green tablecloth. Here I go. Like,
I have one in my office, Joe.
just bust it out. So here's the thing. Like Emily said, as you go through the years, you get a little more blinder taken off. My blinders are all the way off. I've seen behind all the curtains. You can't unsee it. Sometimes we don't hold people accountable because we literally don't have enough evidence. And in those cases, you'll have the most amazing command that did everything right. And they still just, for whatever reason, couldn't get to where they wanted to get. And that's fine. Praise those commands. Let's talk about the rest. No accountability, no transparency, transferring the lemon to the next unit so the behavior can repeat itself. I think that is so huge because I think if I'm watching you, Joanne, and you report and nothing gets done, do you think for a fresh second I'm going to go report?
Oh, no.
Yeah, because I just watched what happened to you. I'm not saying shit. So I think the lack of accountability is such a challenge for victims, survivors. Like, there's a reason they don't report, or they're watching some mainstream high-ranking person that got relieved. We kind of heard a rumor about what, okay, but we're not going to talk about it. Like, it just digs the trench deeper. And the one thing I have seen and at least learned during the network, I can't give you accountability. You're not going to call safe water and I'm going to bust out some miracle and Emily and I are going to like take the gate off the sector and storm in and make sure you get your accountability.
Only if we get enough funds. No.
Yeah.
Where's the donation? And after my retirement date, I'll take the gate off. But I think what's huge is I can't promise you that you're ever going to get accountability. What I can give you, which is the next best thing, is a network of humans that understand. A network of humans that also didn't get accountability. And I cannot tell you what it's like, to do something unless I've done it. So if I can at least give you a room full of people that understand how you feel, that you can commiserate with, as bad as that sounds, it's actually very healthy.
Yeah.
It's very healthy for you to talk to a shipmate who says, I didn't get accountability either. Let's talk about it instead of carrying this anger forever. Because at some point you got to set that anger down. So for me, advocacy is such a challenge. Accountability is a challenge. If there's ways that we can provide that, then that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe, I think all the time about if you would have been there to advocate for me sooner at the unit before me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How much that little thing, if you were sitting in on my CGIS interview, how that would have changed everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, in that right there makes me realize how big the advocacy work really is.
Yeah. I recently called Meghan. What it was this year, 2024. Somebody from my story was promoted, and I saw them come up on the, you know, promotion list. And I'm like, this isn't happening. To be fair, it's just 20 years later, but I'm still angry. It's all right.
Yeah.
But I just remember, if you go back to be in that room, I think I was in E5 alone with some officers. I'm only listening to what they're telling me. I don't have an advocate saying, here are your options. I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
So, like, how different would things be if I would have had an Emily back then to sit next to me and be like, I got you. We're going to
Yeah.
go through this together, and I'm going to answer your questions. And if you feel like you can't say something that you want said, I'll say it. Like, there is some benefit to being old. I'm at the point now, I'll say anything. I'll take a door off a hinge. What would you like me to say on your behalf? I don't care. But,
I'll take a gate down. Don't tempt me
yeah.
with a good time.
Yeah. So if we can give them that, and I had someone recently, and I gave her to Meghan, and she was so happy. She was like, oh my gosh, she knows exactly how I feel. Yes. All day, every day. She knows how you feel. And, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I hope the Coast Guard evolves on the accountability part. But until then, safe
Yeah.
waters.
They need help. People need help. And that's what
Yeah.
we're here to provide, because there's a gap. And we all saw that, and no one else is filling it. And that's what we're trying to do here. And like, we all get it. We've all been at our worst, like the worst.
Like, it's so hard looking back on yourself in that time period, because I felt so naive
Ugh.
that I literally thought that people were going to help me, like that's so horrible
Yes.
to say, but it's hard to look back on, and it shouldn't be that way, because there are good commands out there. There are good victim advocates out there who can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
But for all of you that don't have that, don't feel like you can, like, that's where Safe Water comes in, because I would have utilized this. This would have been so helpful. Could have changed a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely would help the healing process. And I think just for my case alone, like if I had had someone that I could have talked to when my assault happened, I probably would have saved myself a good decade and a half of trauma, like of like just severe mental issues and and abuse and self-loathing and confusion and like man, just to have
Gaslighting.
someone I could have talked, just one person I could have actually talked to. And there was no way I was back then, especially going to my command or anybody in my boat or any of that stuff. And then, but man, yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? But it's, yeah, so hopefully we can be that, right? And help those people. And I kind of like to shift gears if you guys are cool with it, but like talking about getting our word out there, right? And keeping that network from the underground to above ground and actually having us broadcast, we're going to need help, right? So we're going to need other organizations potentially. And I think this is kind of like a PR piece, but I know we've reached out to some folks. We've talked to a few. I'll just go ahead and mention some that I've reached out to, like CPOA, CWOA. I know we've been talking to the Alumni Association, WLI, and these are all nonprofits as well that are attached to the Coast Guard in different ways, kind of like we are. But I think if we're able to partner with them, not necessarily as a resource for people, but for awareness, right? How do you guys see that trajectory? How do you guys see us incorporating or partnering potentially with other people?
I had a really cool chief on the East Coast maybe a couple months ago say to me, he had a male non-rate that had come forward, and I was helping the non-rate, and he told me, the chief. It was so cool because he was like, look, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know how to say the right thing and not to say the wrong thing and not to make this worse. Like, no one gave me training on how to deal with this situation. Like, I don't know. This hasn't happened to me in my career. And it had happened like to the non-rate, he transferred to this unit. So this chief is receiving this person with this trauma from the other unit. That's clearly unresolved trauma. But for me, like, again, resource, you have no idea how to handle that situation. That's uncomfortable. Reach out. Like, again, the goal is not to shame people, it's to help. So I don't think, oh, you just help, the victims or their survivors. I will gladly help a command if they have a question, or they say, hey, hypothetically, this happened. Like, what, from your perspective, the four of you as survivors, what would have helped you? What could I do as a commander or a captain or an XO or an OIC to do better? How do I have those hard conversations? This is really uncomfortable for me. There's no handbook that says, here, read this and you'll be the best leader ever. So I would love to partner with them, not only so that they can spread the word that we exist for their people, but also if they find themselves in a situation where they're like, I don't know what to do with this. It's really great to have a policy and follow the policy, but policy doesn't always include people, emotions.
It includes checklists.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I personally hadn't really thought about that piece of it, but connecting with commands and assisting them or just being a sounding board for them. But I think that's very valid. I've, again, as a VA, working with commands, and I've seen commands that do it right, and I've seen commands that do it wrong. But even the ones that are doing it right, like they're following the policy, they're doing everything they can, they still have questions. They still have that human, how are we doing okay with this person? Like, what does this person actually need? Like, yes, we have the checklist, we follow it, we do our monthly meetings, we talk to CEDIS, blah, 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 blah. Everything's there, right? But they're like, how is that person actually doing? Like, what can we do to help this person? And I think people like us in our situation be like, well, this is what they need. This is what I think they need. This is what they've been talking about, or this is what was very helpful in the past. Like, I think that's awesome, Joe. I think that's a really good point and a good way to connect with those organizations I mentioned, like the Alumni Association. Like, hey, it's not just for the victims. Like, we're also here to just help the whole process, right? To help the whole person and help the commands too to navigate all this stuff. So it's awesome. I don't know.
Well,
What do you
yeah.
guys think?
Well, Big Coast Guard is going to give them a checklist.
Hmm.
Checklists do not teach you how to be a good human being. And I think that it's a dehumanization. And I think that some commands cue in on that, where they're like, okay, well, we've done our checklist, but how do I actually support this person? And I think that Safe Waters can be an awesome resource there as well. I mean, that's a great point, Joanne. Just to humanize people. I mean,
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I see a lot, like in a command position and dealing with sectors and routing things up, as that they are so focused on the timelines and the checklists that they forget that there's a person with a family with problems, and now there's this investigation or whatever might else be going on in their life, and they're just forgotten. We've done our checklist, we're doing everything, da 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 da, and then there's this person. Like, hello, are we going to check in on them and see how they're doing? I know we had 30 days, but maybe ask them. And yeah, and I think I like how you mentioned, Joe, that like they don't know what to say, they don't know how to say the right thing, they've never dealt with it. And I would say to them and challenge them that you're not always going to know the right thing to say, but just showing up and sitting with someone or asking them, or just like, you don't, it's never going to be perfect, you're not always going to say the right thing, but just being there. I challenge everyone, not just commands, but anyone, just sit with the person, sit with them in
Like
whatever emotion they have.
We need like a t-shirt that says just be human.
Yeah.
Like,
For
it's
real.
like the most fundamental thing, but it's so forgotten about. And I hear all the time, like, oh, well, she's a bad worker. Okay, Clark, you would be too if you went through what she went through. Like, are you expecting her to get up with broken legs and run a 7-mile like run? Like,
it's really
my
interesting.
legs broke. Like,
yeah, you and I both know that I was the bad worker, Joe. Like, I was the bad worker. Well, I was the bad worker. In these last 6 months, Julian knows this story. I had somebody that I worked with call me and apologize for the way that he treated me. He was one of my bosses, and that was a really big, kind thing for this person to do. Um, and I had expressed to him, like, you never gave me a chance. And he's like, well, I just didn't want to have any part of it. And I'm like,
Oh.
did you watch my story? And he said, yeah. He goes, that's not what everybody told me you were upset about. And I'm like, that right there, like, did not. And he said, this stuff makes me really uncomfortable. I don't really want to have any part of it. I don't care if this makes you uncomfortable, because it was such an uncomfortable thing for it to happen to me, that if you are a leader in the Coast Guard, you need to be okay with being uncomfortable and being in those situations, because you're going to come across it. It's only a matter of time, you know? And I think that people just want to like live in denial of the underground network. They don't want to deal with it, but as you move up in the ranking system, you're gonna have to deal with it. And so these people need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. And
There's
not
an
just being
oven
on.
mitt somewhere here, Julian. I don't know where I have it, but I think of you every time I see it from when I
Ah,
said, like, stop passing them. Remember? It's
yeah.
great. Little piece for you, Emily. So, if someone asks you to share your story and you decide to trauma dump, but not practice first what's going to come out of your mouth, there's no real telling what's going to come out. And when I filmed that story, I had never said all of it at one time out loud, ever.
Hmm.
Probably should have done that in the counseling office. No, I gave it to Julian and Megan. You're welcome. And I guess there was a question about what Megan's talking about, like being uncomfortable and having this stuff happen. And I was talking about stop passing the hot potato, like deal with the hot potato, slay it. Like, we're not just going to pass the hot potato to the next unit. And one of the questions was like, well, what? I don't remember. Something like, well, what would you tell us about? And I was like, get an oven mitt. I was like having a melt. And I was like, get an oven mitt. If the potato's hot, you signed up to be a leader. Get an oven mitt. Fast forward like 2 months, and I get a package in the mail. It's an oven mitt, but it's made out of the sapper ribbon material. And it's so good. So somewhere in this office, there's an oven mitt, a sapper oven mitt.
I think that
You're
should be the
welcome.
t-shirt.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
We should
If
sell
you'd
oven
like me
mitts.
to, it was courtesy of Julian. It took me a minute to
You're
figure it
welcome.
out. It was
Yeah.
Julian. Don't ask me where he got sapper fabric from, but if anyone needs me to mass produce them an oven mitt.
Uh,
But it's exactly what Megan is saying. Like,
yeah.
we're going to partner with people. I want to be able to answer a question for you if you have a question, or we're going to partner with volunteers that we trust that maybe want to help. And like Julian said, they stay non-disclosure in our guidelines, doing the right thing. Like, there's a million ways to partner, but I think be human.
Stops
You're
the hot
human.
potato.
Hmm.
Yeah, stop passing the hot potato. Put it on the plate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's awesome. Yeah, just being human, man. Just being human, be able to meet people where they are, talk to them. And it's hard, right? It's hard for a lot of people to get to that point. I don't blame, especially junior personnel. Like if they third class is dealing with a group of non-rates that are all troublemakers, like your situation, Megan, like that third or second class, he's not going to give a shit because all he knows is that everyone's trouble, right? And he
Hmm.
doesn't have
Yeah.
time for that. And his chief is an asshole, right?
Yep.
So like, I kind of forgive that. It's not right by any means, but I can kind of understand it. But that
Absolutely.
second class should still be able to go, hey, chief, so and so is having a really hard time, and I don't know how to handle it. Like, what do I do, right?
Yeah.
And not just that, but like if the chief is uncomfortable, man, maybe I should call these safe waters folks. I think they're a bunch of people that understand this issue and gone through it. Maybe they can help me and they can help me help this person, right? So like getting that word out there, I think is crucial too. So that's awesome. That's awesome. You have anything else, Emily? Are you good?
No, I think we all covered it. I mean, the other resources that like we're trying to partner with are, like chaplains or pastors, anybody in, the religious realm, and then therapists and inpatient care, things like that. Things that are not associated with the Coast Guard, because I think that's important as well, because that is a fear of it coming back to work and affecting you because you sought care, or people think you're weak, or whatever you might think others are thinking of you, which that should never stop you from getting the help that you need. And I think it is a hindrance for a lot of people. I know it was for me. Like, I didn't want to get help. I didn't want to tell anybody, and took forever to go to therapy, So I think that if we're here and we have these resources that aren't associated, it's not going to get back to your HS and then to your warrant or whatever, like, I think that's important to have.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And talking about resources kind of jumps into my next little segment here. And this is about fundraising, right? So for us and getting the word out there, I think this is part of that. But like, what ideas, obviously, we're talking to those other organizations we mentioned, but like, what other ideas and initiatives can we put out there today to help us to raise funds to assist people? Like, what are we thinking?
Well, you're getting ahead because I don't have the bank account yet. Okay.
I'm just gonna call her out.
I knew you were. I knew you were.
I was waiting.
um, well, everybody loves sweatshirts. We've talked about doing something for something special for the first, I don't know how many, Megan, maybe like first 20 people who donate to us, or something like a special gift from us. We don't know what it's going to say yet. It's all a surprise, even to us. But there's all sorts of different ways to fundraise. The CPOA and CWA, they do golf events. We could do a golf. We could do 5K. That fishing trip. There's just so many things that we can do, and I think a lot of people out there want to help us and want to see us succeed, because they're like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, I know I've had several of my friends reach out and like, what are you doing? I want to be the first to donate. And I'm like, cool, thank you, but I don't have a place for your money to go yet. And I think that Meghan has probably seen that too on her social media platform as well. So I think there's a lot of great opportunity, but the bank account, I've keep hearing it from Meghan, so it's coming. It's on the way.
On the way, on the way. Because I know people are asking, and I just want to get that out there on this platform so people can know, like, hey, it is
Yes.
coming as soon as it's there, and it's going to be soon. I know that, and we're going to put it all out there. We're going to advertise that. Different ways to donate, different levels. I think we've talked about as well,
Yes.
like membership levels,
Joanne
and
has and just so everyone is aware, Joanne has, told me I'm the admin lady. So I guess I'm in charge of getting the bank account, and I'm working on the website, and
Just
she wants
saying,
us to have a Patreon.
you don't want me to be your admin person. I can barely remember my name each day.
So the bank account's coming. We're probably gonna have, all the platforms, Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, a website for donations, as well as a phone number and a chat feature. I'm working on all of that. So there's a lot behind the scenes that is happening that you guys aren't seeing, but we're all doing a lot. And I think that's great about our team, is that we all kind of have these roles that we just kind of took on. Like, we didn't
yeah,
really talk about it, but it was just like, oh, okay, like, I'm working on this, and Julian, he's writing up documents. Meghan is crying on social media for our fundraising. And Joe is taking all of the calls and doing great with that. And I don't know, we have just worked so well together. And yeah, there's a lot behind the scenes happening, and I'm excited to get it all out there for everyone.
awesome.
But
Yeah.
Meghan, do you have anything, or Joe?
Yeah, I have a lot of people that obviously I'm still taking the calls. So, sooner we can get that safe water phone number. Anyway, a lot of people are asking, like, if I'm going to give $1 a month or donate, like, what does it go towards? And so I want to be clear, like, as we grow and get everything established and get the bank account going, by we, I mean Meghan, will be going on social media and talking about where your dollars go. We will keep you up to date, so you see your dollars in action. But I recently had a young man that needed inpatient, and he didn't want to go because he didn't have anywhere to put his dog. That fundraiser, I will find you a local kennel, and if we can help foster the price of your dog being boarded for the 12 days that you need to go inpatient, like, I want to be able to say, I got you. Like,
Yep.
you don't have to get rid of your dog. Your dog is a form of therapy.
Hmm.
Yes, you go to inpatient. No, you don't. Like, he's too embarrassed. He's not going to go to his chief's mess and be like, can you pay for my dog to be boarded while I go to therapy? That's not happening.
No.
Yeah.
So you can contact us and we can help do that. Or I recently had two survivors that met up and sent me a picture of them together at Starbucks. I'd like to pay for that coffee, please. Like, I'm
Hmm.
happy that I connected you two and you're going to form that bond. Here's a Starbucks card for $20. So your dollars will be very much appreciated. And we will make Meghan go on social media and talk about, where are the donations going? What are you doing with them? I promise, none of us are shopping with it.
Any barriers that these people have of receiving care is what
Yeah.
Safe Waters wants to take care of.
Yep. Including being able to assist Emily in paying for the website, paying for,
Help me, I'm poor.
Help me, I'm
paying for the
poor.
phone number, being able to do that stuff. Right now, that underground network is my cell phone number, which has been chilling in global for like 3 years. No offense, I'm a little sleepy. I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
want
be
any
sad.
creepers having my number.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I don't want my number out there, so I would like it for
Mhm.
all of us to have a safe space for us to talk to people.
Yeah. And not only that, but we'd eventually like to pay, if there's therapists that are a resource, like paying them for their time because time is valuable and like they're taking time to volunteer for us. So like if we would be able to give them a little bit of something just to say thank you for supporting us and supporting our members, these survivors, like that would be great. And yeah, the cost of running SafeWater is a nonprofit. Like I don't think the costs are going to be that much, the website, the phone number, the initial startup cost. Like I think that's pretty much it day to day. But big scheme of things, like Joe was saying, being able to pay for the boarding, being able to pay for somebody's coffee, or even having volunteers in the area, like, hey, would you be able to take in a dog for 12 days? Like, that would be great.
Gas. You need gas money for, like, I could
Yeah,
go on for an hour.
Or getting
Let's
us
just,
to our survivors if
yeah.
they so need us there to advocate for them, you know?
Mhm.
if you knew how much money I spent in 2023 and 2024 to physically get there to sit with somebody during a CGIS interview or to assist them while speaking to their command. Will I do it? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I will. But I also want to say, should there be a rich person that's really into this podcast, big rich person, just love me some sailors.
Tax write off.
Yeah.
If you could just go ahead and know that in the future, I would love for us to have, I don't want to call it a conference because that makes everyone go to sleep, but like a retreat, like in certain areas of the country where maybe everybody in this district that is a victim survivor can come spend the day with like-minded people. That's for my rich person donor, wherever he
Yeah.
is. I don't know where you're at, but I hope you're listening.
They're out there.
They're out
Could I
there.
please do
Yeah.
this retreat? And I'm sure that will take years before we grow into that. But
Yeah.
for me, the peer support, there's nothing better than in person. There's just not. Like, that's why I try to match people. I'm on the West Coast. If you have a problem in New York and you want immediate peer support, I'm trying to find somebody in that network I've talked to in the last 3 years that I trust that will come sit with you.
Yes.
So anyway, for the rich people in the back, I got an oven mitt for you. If you would just maybe write me a check for that retreat, just saying.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's something that you mentioned before, just about being transparent, right? Talk about the Coast Guard's issues with that, but I think our organization moving forward being very open, very transparent with what we're doing, how we're spending money, how we're helping people, what kind of resources we're giving to people. I think that's just gonna give us so much momentum, right, and credibility. I know we're all dedicated to that as well, so I don't think that's going to be an issue moving forward. So, for any potential donors listening, we're going to be very above board. We actually already have legal representation to make sure that we're crossing everything, doing everything above board, not messing up. So everything is doing done the right way, and I think it's good to advertise that part of it. So, um, I think we've covered most of the questions that I had for this interview. I think we've hit all our main topics. I think we've really covered what we are, who we are, what our goals are, right, in the short term. and we've talked about some potential things further down the line, like the 3 to 5 year mark. And I think that's awesome. Is there anything else that you feel like we really need to cover on this interview? And I'm just going to open it up to everybody.
Megan, did you have something? She's smiling. Why is
I
she
see
smiling?
it.
No, I don't want to talk anymore.
Megan's done.
Think we're done?
Yeah, I mean, I think we
Yeah,
covered
I don't think we missed anything.
Yeah, I went through the questions and I mean, I think we hit everything, right? We're still in that forming phase. So like a lot of it's, things are coming. I just want to make sure our audience knows that we are still forming. It's not off and running, but we're at the starting line. We're like right there about to hit the go button and it's there, right? So I think we're ready to push the message out there and start getting the feedback.
Yeah. If there's questions though after this podcast, you can hit us up on social media and ask them, and Megan will do the video or
I
something.
was thinking that I will put out on social media asking people questions they have for us, and then when I am with Emily in Wisconsin, we
Oh,
do a live and answer people's questions.
okay.
Yeah, if anybody had any curiosity, Megan's our social media person.
For now.
For now, I don't want to do this forever, but yeah.
Yeah, I think questions as they come in, and if it's about the network, I'll only share vaguely and anonymously as I usually do. So please don't send us any very pointed questions. We will not answer those. I will keep that network intact as I have for a few years, and hopefully transfer it off to safe waters so it can continue to be better than what it is.
Something that I would really like to do for our followers is give updates of how we've helped people. Anonymous, non-descriptive, but like, hey, we just helped another survivor today get into inpatient care, or we just helped somebody get into therapy. Keeping people informed about what we're doing and that we're proceeding forward and helping people, because our work is going to be all behind closed doors. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I'd really like to
That'd be
keep
cool.
people in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, and
Do you want to end the podcast and go over one? Sorry, Emily. Do you want to
No,
go
you're
over
good.
the recent one and how we helped?
Yeah, let's do
Sure.
that.
Want to leave on a happy note? Okay.
Yeah.
So we had a victim contact us. I don't know, it was February of this year. I can't even remember when we made the videos, but in February, needed some assistance, sexual assault at a unit, did come forward and report, but was not feeling like the aftercare the Coast Guard provided was effective. Still being asked to come to work every day and function when this person didn't feel like they could function. So the first thing they asked for was advocacy, to talk to their command and explain like, hey, I broke a leg and you're asking me to go run with a broken leg. Like, it is the same as a physical injury. So I was able to provide that advocacy and then connect them with the chief in their area who could sit in on the command stuff since I'm far away. I received, if that was February, I received a Merry Christmas message from this Coastie, and it was so awesome. They said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. You helped me back in February with this and this. And I said, yes, of course I remember you. How's it going? And then of course I'm looking like, when's the last time I checked on them? Because there's one of me. So I'm like, did I check on them? Good news is I did in July. But they said that the network being the network, they recently had a young man that needed to go to a captain's mast and had no representative. And they felt something in them, the need to give back to a stranger, just like they had gotten in February. And they went and they represented this young man at the mast, who turns out was a horrible worker, horrible performer, hence why he was being masted. But go figure, there was a whole story of assault behind that. And so the two tied together, and this person is now helping him through the process, which is effectively what the network is, right? Us connecting people to people. So super cool to hear from somebody over Christmas that they're doing awesome. They got everything they needed, and now they're paying it forward.
Yeah, I love it. That's what it's all about, man. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a huge success story.
Love that.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great note to end it on, unless there's anything else from the board.
Emily, did you have something? I feel like you had something. No?
Oh,
All
no,
good?
nothing important. We can talk about it on our social media.
Got it. More to come. More to
More
come.
to come.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. This has been fun. Like every meeting we have, I'm glad we're getting this out there. So thanks, and we'll be talking soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for listening to the interview. Thanks for tuning in. I really hope it was informative. I really hope it answered some questions that you may have regarding Safe Waters and what we're about, what services we can provide, and where we hope to go in the future. So if you do have questions, please reach out to myself, reach out to the Safe Waters folks. I'll put all of our contact information in the episode description and our links. We're still working on a website. It's coming. Like I said, we're just in that forming stage, so things are still coming together, but we've made a lot of progress over the past month since we formed. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for all the support. Since I've started Sailor's Disgrace, it's been extremely humbling to be a part of this amazing group, and now it's even truly an honor to be a part of Safe Waters. We really have a fantastic group of people that honestly, truly care about what we're doing and the people that we hope to serve. So again, if you have any questions at all, please reach out to me, reach out to the Safe Waters group, and help us, help us be something special, help us be a part of people's lives when they need it. There's a lot of folks out there that do struggle with recovery, that do struggle with finding themselves again after an assault or an harassment. So that's what we're here to do. Hopefully we're here to help. And I know there's a lot of good people out there, and the more people that we have to support, the stronger that we are going to be. And I can't be, again, more grateful for everything that you guys have done. And again, thanks for tuning in. So as always, I'd like to thank David Brown of Wayward Blues for the theme music. Does an excellent job, really fits the theme for the show. And that's all I have to say on this one, folks. Please send questions, send notes, and I hope to hear from you soon. Take care of yourselves.